Going to be checking out something new and rather interesting from the folks over at Mattel. This is the new Mattel DC Multiverse Platinum Collection. This is Injustice 2 Batman. Keeping its promise to fight for justice, Bruce Wayne vows not to cross the line that sets him apart from his enemies. Let's take the tape measure to figure out how tall the Platinum Edition Injustice Batman stands. He's about on par with what you would expect to get from a DC Multiverse figure. The figure's close to about 7 inches. Now I'm factoring in the tips of his ears, or of his cowl that is, to give us that 7-inch clearance. If we take away that, the figure's closer to about 6.5 inches in height. Sadly, Batman doesn't come much in the way of accessories. Basically, what you see is the figure, what you see is the stand, what you see is all of his accessories. That's all you're really going to be getting. The base is actually really nice. I do like the sunken-in, etched version of the DC logo here, and giving us just a very simple, yet very effective display base. Would like to really see them entertain using this base for future figures. I really don't think it has to have a lot of bells and whistles, which the other multiverse figures, to their, I want to say their credit and not so much their credit, the Flash as well as the Val Kilmer Batman from Batman Forever, those multiverse figures had a very complex, busy display base, and in the sense that there was a lot of things you could do with it. But I think if they keep really just to simples, this is actually a really nice looking base to come include with Batman. Put that to the side. Of course, what you're really interested in is how does these new Platinum Edition figures stack up? Well, first and foremost, I found this at my local Walmart. Wasn't expecting to see them at all. I knew we were getting the, of course, the Flash and the Batman. Those were stocked in shelves for a very long time. I just happened to be walking through the aisles and it caught my eye. It was actually more the side of the package that caught my eye than anything else. And I found out that they were starting to stock these bad boys as well. So the Platinum Edition, what does that necessarily entail? Well, it entails a figure that ends up being made or comprised mostly of die-cast parts. Like the legs here, for example, feel like they're die-cast. The chest, most especially, feels like it's heavy die-cast metal. The arms feel like they probably are a little closer to being the plastic end of variety, so I think it's actually more so, like, definitely the bottom here feels heavy. The legs, I want to say, could be a metal. They could likely be a plastic. So it's probably maybe just the lower legs and the torso that make up the die-cast nature of these figures. But it definitely equals a heavier Batman than perhaps what we have seen before. Part of me thinks it's novelty, the idea that you're incorporating die-cast parts. Because, of course, with die-cast comes a more expensive figure. To be fair, though, I actually think I paid the same price for this guy that I did for every other figure. So that's somewhat perplexing that a figure that has heavier materials would end up ultimately being the same price as another multiverse figure. I'd have to check my receipt, which is somewhere around the vicinity here, to see if I actually paid the exact same price. I feel like I would have. I don't think this figure would have skyrocketed past the point of, well, the existing figures are about $34 here in Canada. If this was die-cast and they made use of the fact that the materials made the figure more expensive, then perhaps you may be looking at about a $40 to $45 price point, and I don't think people would necessarily pay that. In hand, it's a beautiful looking figure. Not the most Batman look to it. Of course, most of it looks like Batman. The head, minus of course for the points and the tops of its cowl, really doesn't read at all like Batman. It reads like it would be another character. It's got a neat design element. It's a nice departure from normal Batman designs. It's definitely unique. It's as if, I'm sure everybody else would have had the same thought. It's as if Batman made Iron Man suits. This essentially would be an Iron Man suit for Batman. Or I guess if Tony Stark made, more importantly, an Iron Man suit for Batman, this is basically what you would be getting here. So everything on him is what I would love to use, and I don't use this word nearly enough in these reviews. Everything about him is augmented. Everything is upgraded here on Batman. A combination mostly of blacks and silvers make up the majority of his costume. You get these nice little peakings of blue like highlights here. These running lines of light that run from his sleeve to like the top area of his shoulder. Some of that blue also carries its way into his utility belt, which is a interesting new design for Batman here. He's heavily plated. All you can see are these little rivets and areas in which the suit has been forged. Very, very intricate details can be said for Batman's, not only for his helmet, but again, like the majority of his outfit. There's still Batman-esque elements to it, one of which being the cloth cape, which kind of goes back to the old traditional capes that we used to see. And actually, some of the figures are now starting to see again, like the Superpowers Multiverse figures that we've looked at on this channel as well. Plug, plug, plug. There's the back of the figure, a very bulky, massive sized frame here on Batman. He still has the little fins on the sides of his hands, on his arms here, which do feel like they are of a slightly softer plastic. Part of me, again, would love to dissect this and figure out exactly which part is die-cast. From my best in-hand impressions, I would say that the head is plastic. The arms do feel like they are plastic. That seems an obvious one. The torso definitely feels like it's metal. And then perhaps it's a combination of two different materials. You got the metal in the boots, and then perhaps the plastic in the legs. Because the plastic, these don't feel quite, not like metal has a distinct feel to it, but you definitely feel more density in areas such as the torso. The legs, again, like maybe the lower torso, because again, the way that they're pegged into place, those could very well also be plastic too. So it does make me wonder if by die cast, it is really only in the torso and nowhere else. But it does feel like it's maybe a little heavier down here. I'm not going to spend a whole review talking about which is which and which isn't die cast. It's got some nice clean coloring to it. The trade-off, I suppose, for the fact that it's using die-cast elements is the fact that the figure is top-heavy. If you keep his feet firmly flatted, firmly planted on a flat surface, the figure stands fine. Any bit of spreading and moving the legs any further than the point of being on a flat-footed surface, any bit past that point, the figure does seem like it wants to topple. Although, again, I can get him doing some splits, and the figure stands fine. It's really kind of more so when you start moving the legs forward or back that he does, of course, get a little more top-heavy. I also want to mention, too, that the base itself, the pegs that they've included, don't feel like they're the right pegs for his feet. They sit in there, but I don't get that sense that they're tabbing into place with a strong footing. Pegging him into place, yeah, he does stay in there, but it's not. I don't feel it's the most secure of stableness. And if you detach one of the feet from the base because you want a wider stance, that's where you start gambling the risk of it possibly toppling over. Let's go through his posability here. His head rotates technically all the way around. There's a hinge happening up and down on the neck area here. Shoulders move out, and to note as well, these little flaps, the panels here on his shoulders are independently hinged. In other words, ergo, when you move the arms up, the shoulder pads do move as well, so they stay out of the way when you are moving the arms. Forward and back, no motion happening there on the arms. The arms bend. He rather has an interesting rotation in the bicep instead of being in the forearm area. Normally the forearm, it would be the area that would be rotating. Instead, though, it's happening up at the top of the bicep. Hands rotate all the way around. Let me also just show you the fact that the hands are completely closed shut. So even if he had come with accessories, he really didn't have the hands anyways to hold them. He has a waist swivel. Legs split out, forward and back, bend at the knee. No swiveling happening here, which is, again, makes me wonder if some of this does have the die-cast happening. Because if not, why would they not have a swivel happening here? Or at the very least, like a double hinge. It seems like some of the hinges on these figures, this specific figure, they've kept it very simple. A simple hinge on the elbow, a simple hinge on the leg. A lot of that could be chalked up to the fact that they wanted to use less component pieces to keep the cost on this guy down, because the die cast is eating up so much of the cost of making the figure that maybe they wanted to keep the joints limited, or they did it so that the figure would be as stable as he possibly could. I feel like it's actually more so, saving costs versus making the figure stable. Interestingly enough, though, the foot, as sculpted as it is, nicely sculpted here, the feet have zero in the way of posability. Again, you can chalk that up to saving the cost because of the die cast eating up so much of the figure's cost of production. As probably the reasoning why they didn't put that. I can't simply think that Mattel thought, okay, well, let's not put a lot of hinges on this figure because that will certainly aid with the figure toppling over a lot. I don't think that'd be the case. I think the figure was more so done this way in order to keep the cost down. Under the Platinum Collection line, they also advertised so far a die-cast release of the Injustice Superman featured on the back of the package, which would be something that I would definitely entertain picking up if I ever come across it. It may be the case where they weren't released at the same time. Maybe Batman was released first and foremost, with with Superman, the Man of Steel, soon after that. So I'll definitely pick him up when he eventually gets released. I like this figure. I'm of two minds, though. One half of my mind thinks that the cost of creating this figure with die cast, again, I'd have to find my receipt, it does make for a heavier figure and therefore a little bit more expensive. Is the figure necessarily needing die cast? Absolutely not. I think the figure would look, if I didn't tell you that he had die cast on him, looking at him, would you ever think that he had metal components? Probably not, which it would be one half of my argument as to why that they didn't necessarily need to incorporate die-cast parts. If looking at the figure from a design standpoint, die-cast metal really is going to benefit whether it looks better or worse. It's not like it's shinier metal or anything like that. It looks like it blends perfectly into every other component on the figure itself. On the other end of it, though, and this is where I'm of debating minds here, incorporating a little bit of metal, as I've mentioned when it comes to like Hot Toy Iron Man reviews, there's certain figures that because they are armored, it is a nice bonus to be able to pick up the figure and have a substantial weight to it. That only goes so far as to actually physically holding the figure in hand. Solely looking at the figure on the shelf, you would never know it has metal, but it does feel nice being able to pick up a bulky armored figure that has substantial weight to it. It is really disappointing to get a Hot Toys Iron Man of the earlier years and picking up the figure and knowing that it's comprised of plastic. There's something somewhat satisfying of picking up a figure that has heavy weight to it, especially when it's a character such as RoboCop or Iron Man, which Hot Toys has done. So, again, two different opinions. One opinion is it really didn't need it, but I kind of like the fact that there is weight to the figure when you do pick it up. I would never need a Harley Quinn in die-cast metal. I think that would be absolutely ridiculous. But keeping to maybe more armored up figures, it's a nice bonus treat for an otherwise plastic market that Mattel is currently releasing these figures under. If you have had a chance to pick up the Batman here from Injustice 2, let me know down below in the comment section what you think of the figure. Would you be on board paying a little bit extra, if that be the case, paying a little bit extra for die-cast components versus just regular plastic? It would be interesting for me to find that receipt. I'm going to see if I can find it. Going into, say, a Toys R Us, for example, if they did ever separate these figures by price point, I think that would be a real substantial loss for Mattel. Looking at the figures themselves, it would be very hard for a parent with a child to say, yes, I will spend the extra $5, $10 for a die-cast version of the figure versus a plastic figure that's right next door that looks almost identical to sight. So again, mileage may vary whether these lines will, specifically the Platinum line, will expand further beyond the point of armored characters. I think they probably should just keep it to armored characters as to the reasoning why they should warrant having the metal components to it. A very long-winded wrap-up of this video. At any rate, guys, if you haven't had a chance to hit that little subscribe button down below, make sure you do so. More videos will be coming your way. And of course, I always like reading comments down below. So what do you think of the Platinum Collection? Always interested in hearing your comments down below. More guys, more videos will be coming your way. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.